Today we're going to talk about the top foods to help with your insulin resistance. Welcome to my very humble channel. Let's go right on into it and talk about insulin resistance. How did you develop it? What is it? And what top foods and dietary measure is going to get you back in order? Fix that health crisis, dare I say. Here's something very important to understand. Regulating your insulin, avoiding the insulin resistance and the type 2 diabetes really isn't about the food. It's about everything. Food does matter. I do think that a ketogenic protocol is the best measure, but some of you have a gallbladder issue. It is a total life transformation to get that blood sugar in check and get that insulin sensitive. This is a very interesting subject near to my heart because either people do not realize that they're insulin resistant or type 2 diabetic, or in fact, they are not at all and they're paranoid that their blood sugar is running too high. But let's go into what is insulin resistance. Now I'm going to make this very simple. Insulin is a hormone produced by the beta cells of your pancreas that helps grab that blood sugar. And in nature, see, if we were never exposed to processed carbohydrates, in nature it would be very easy to release insulin to food that's growing wild. For example, wild spinach. I'm not talking about the oxalates or berries. Now, these are both bitter plants, so the amount of insulin that you would need to regulate that blood sugar is easy breezy. We need insulin to take glucose out of the bloodstream and use it or store it. So use it for quick energy or store it for later energy. Seems like a very simple subject, but we're confused because the recommended RDA of carbohydrates on that pyramid is that the bottom is a bunch of starches and carbs and breads and rices and pastas and cereal and things of this nature. We are taught that these foods are healthy, but today people are waking up and they're starting to realize that these grains, not only are they processed, but they also have anti-nutrients like gluten, which is a protein that damages the lining of the cells. And that's why people start to have like bloated and tired and headache and disease and joint pain. But let's get back to the whole concept of insulin resistance, the top foods or dietary measure. Unfortunately, I grew up eating Captain Crunch, honeycombs, then I switched to cornflakes. These are all processed carbohydrates. We're not even getting to the preservatives and the chemicals and the dyes and the chemicals like forever in those types of cereals. And then we used to eat Wonder Bread sandwiches. But if we just take the processed grain itself, it has been crushed, bleached. Once it's stuck together as like a cereal and then in a box and you pour some milk and you eat this cereal, it already starts to dissolve in our saliva with an enzyme called amylase. It's breaking it down because we're talking starches. Once it hits your stomach, it doesn't need much breaking down. It breaks down very quickly with chloric acids and other enzymes and goes right into your small intestine. When it goes into your small intestine, again, there's so much carbohydrate that can now enter the bloodstream as sugar that not only does it enter the bloodstream quickly, but it enters in very, very large amounts. Large amounts of glucose in the bloodstream from eating crackers or cereal or sugar itself is so much, because in nature you would have a fig perhaps right before it drops, so you have less anti-nutrients. We wouldn't be cultivating this is when we were hunter-gatherers, but once you even enter the cultivation and hybridization and agriculture phase of human evolution, even back then, they didn't eat as many carbohydrates as we eat today. In other cultures, I've traveled a lot. In other cultures, people are eating liver, they're eating organ meats, they're eating eyes, tongue, intestine, heart, because these fatty meats are loaded in vitamins and minerals. You don't need a multivitamin whatsoever that's toxic when you eat something as simple as liver, beef liver, chicken, lamb, fish liver. People are so confused because we think today, we don't think about our human evolution as hunter-gatherers. They weren't hunting like figs and spinach and berries. That's not sustainable for life. They are looking for meat. They're looking for fatty meats and organs because they are chock-loaded in micronutrients, vitamins and minerals, and vitamin D, E, A, and K, and a plethora of minerals that cells need to communicate. The reason why our hunter-gatherer ancestors didn't have diabetes and insulin resistance is because they really prized the organ meats, as you can see here with liver. It's actually my very favorite food, and it is chock loaded with nutrition. Look at the amount of vitamins and minerals in liver. Some of my favorite ones are vitamin A. They helped improve my eyes exponentially in the first year of eating liver. Manganese, copper, selenium, zinc, vitamin D, B12, and even vitamin C. Yep. If you're living in a Western society, especially the US or Europe, you're growing up on carbs. Tons of them. Cereals and pastas and breads and the sweets, the candies, the muffins, the crackers, the cookies, the shakes, the bacon with sugar in it. I mean, every freaking thing has sugar in it. Now your body is not releasing insulin to the equal amount of carbohydrates in the blood. Now it's got to overshoot. The blood sugar gets so high or becomes so elevated, right? Because it barely needs to be digested. So it's entering the blood at a high volume and a lot of it. The pancreas has to overwork and barf out bolus amounts of insulin to get rid of that. Because if blood sugar is chilling in your blood more than 3 hours, it starts to damage cells. And it's like battery acid. It's awful for all the cells in the body, and the heart pumps, boom, boom. And it's like blood sugar, blood sugar, blood sugar. Damage, damage, damage. And that's why we see so many people who age through advanced glycation end product. Their cells are just literally. I think a visual is better to help you guys understand blood sugar for somebody on carbs and blood sugar with someone who's on a low carb diet. I know this chart must look very confusing to most people, but I've done a lot of videos explaining the numbers. If you find yourself with a blood sugar in milligrams per deciliter at 65, for example, that dark green, that's way too low. You most likely have dysglycemia or you have hypoglycemia, which is a part of insulin resistance. In millimoles, that would be a 3.6. For people to be in ketosis, I love to see numbers between a 75 and an 83, or a 4.1 to a 4.6. That would be a good ketogenic range, but of course your ketones need to be between a 1.8 and a 3.0. Let's talk about the foods. Is there specific foods to fix your insulin resistance? No. It's really all about the entire 24-hour day, your entire life. That is going to help balance your blood sugar, like cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone. It's designed to break down amino acids in your body, which are proteins everywhere, my people, in your skin, in your collagen, and raise your blood sugar so you've got energy to get through that bustling, crazy day. And then when you fast on top of that, the body goes into hardcore gluconeogenesis to raise the blood sugar, to give you gasoline to drive the car, and rinse and repeat day in and day out, putting stress on the body through gluconeogenesis and the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, and the thyroid axis, which then, of course, affects your reproductive system. But let's get back to this insulin resistance. Emotional stress, physical stress, chemical and pollutions combined with lack of sleep and your diet is what is making you unhealthy, sick, fat, hormonal, and tired. Is a carnivore diet the solution? No. More like a ketogenic diet is the solution, I feel, with my experience over time working with thousands and thousands of people. If you can get into ketosis, that will balance your blood sugar. You will always have blood sugar, but you won't have high blood sugar. Then you become insulin sensitive. Fatty meats like pork belly, the ribeyes and the ground beef. Now they're great. They're amazing. Loaded in nutrition and fat-soluble vitamins. I also like the egg yolks if you don't have a sensitivity to the yolks. Butter is another high-dense, nutrient-dense food because we need to consider high fat to regulate that blood sugar. Fat is not going to spike your blood sugar. It will only spike if you have a sensitivity or an allergic reaction or any type of inflammatory or histamine reaction to any of these fats. But if you don't, then fat really is the food to help regulate insulin. That's why a ketogenic diet's so awesome, because you're going to drive ketosis, right? You're going to eat a high-fat diet. You have to have a healthy liver. You're going to get your stress down. You're going to eat high-fat foods, fatty meats, fatty cuts of meat. Obviously, the fatty cuts of beef, the pork. Chicken would be last on the list. It's more high in omega-6. The liver, the organ meats are a lot better in a chicken rather than just eating chicken breasts all the time. But beyond fatty cuts of meat, you really have to consider your overall health. The cortisol, the chemical exposure. It's not about the top foods. It's about how you live your life. Do you breathe? A lot of people are not getting enough oxygen to the cell just because they don't know how to breathe. A lot of people are not sleeping in enough deep sleep cycles for repair. You're not repairing. And even if you ate the most perfect foods, if you don't deal with the stress or the chemical exposure, the body is not going to balance. If you can't sleep, the body can't repair. So it's more than just foods alone that help with insulin resistance. But a well-formulated ketogenic diet really, in my experience, is the best way to end this insulin resistance roller coaster. There's no need for anybody to be insulin resistant in today's time with so much amazing information out there and the ability to use a ketogenic, well-formulated protocol to balance your blood sugar and your overall health.